I love when we can bring a new scientific study or paper to you. The research we usually share is laser focused on one factor affecting one outcome. It's how science works, but we'd like to zoom out and give some perspective on how all those specific things hopefully work together in harmony. Brad Chatterley is in studio to talk about this holistic approach through the lens of frankincense. Hello and welcome to Young Living's podcast, The Wild Drop. My name is Jacob Young, your host. Young Living is the world leader in producing and distributing premium essential oils, and this podcast will provide you with drops of information about Young Living, including stories, history, product information, lots of little fun facts, and even more. Well, Mr. Brad, welcome back to the podcast. We're always excited to have you. Honestly, everyone that we have here is just a wealth of knowledge, but I think your knowledge in particular is what most people are most excited about listening to, and that comes to the products specifically, some of our ingredients, and then how we acquire those ingredients. So we thought it would be really cool if you shared a little bit about frankincense in particular.
Okay. I am, first of all, happy to be here. I love coming on the podcast and talking about products and about Young Living and what makes us different. And I love frankincense. One of my favorite oils, one of the oils that I use the most. All of our versions of frankincense, I think we'll get a little bit into what all of those are and why we have them all. But can I start somewhere a little different?
Of course you can.
It's going to be like, wait, I thought we were talking about frankincense. But we will get to frankincense.
It kind of ties all in together.
We're gonna take a meandering path, which another one of your frequent podcast guests, Monica Catalano, my boss, sometimes rolls her eyes when Brad does his meandering paths to get to his point. but we're gonna try it. Okay?
I like it. Let's do it.
Okay. So, did you know that we have a national center for complementary and integrative health in the U.S.?
I did not know that.
Okay. So their purpose is, this is from their website, advancing research on evidence-based non-pharmacologic therapies. You don't have to know what non-pharmacologic means. It just means basically not like medicine-based, not pharmaceutical-based. So why do we have the Center for Complementary and Integrative Health? Like, this won't surprise you. I'm going to read a statement from their website too that I think everyone that's listening can agree with. They say, and I know we have people all over the world, but this is a U.S. organization, but I think this will apply to people all over the world. Americans are stressed and frustrated navigating a fragmented healthcare system focused on addressing disease rather than considering the whole person and promoting health. Did you agree with that, probably?
I think that is a very factual statement.
I think everybody gets frustrated navigating the healthcare system. And we're not a healthcare company, we're a wellness company. But I think that speaks to the difference in approaches that are out there for how we deal with, how we seek after, and how we define health. And, you know, there's those ideas that are like so commonplace that you don't even recognize them because they're just like the water you swim in. Mm-hmm. So one of the words that I want to talk about today is a word called reductionism. And reductionism is part of the reason why I think people are so frustrated with this medical approach to health and wellness. So reductionism is not a bad idea. Okay, it's a good idea. It's been very helpful. And it's rooted in the assumption that problems can be solved by dividing them into smaller and simpler units, right? So you have a big problem. It's like, well, let's break it down. Let's take it like one bite at a time. Let's look at this. What's happened over the course of time in the medical approach to health and wellness, though, is that they have viewed the body as a machine. And they viewed illness as a breakdown of those mechanical parts. So it takes this complex health problems, breaks it down into these smaller, isolatable issues. When you go to the doctor and you have a bunch of issues, what often happens is they look at each one of those individually and treat them separately. All right. That works in a lot of instances. It works in a lot of instances. But there's circumstances where it's this interplay between parts that creates a behavior or an effect that isn't explained by the parts alone. It's like looking at systems as opposed to like an individual isolated component of that system. And I think the wellness approach that we have at Young Living and in other like complementary approaches is one that looks systematically and it looks whole person rather than treating the person like this machine. And it's like, okay, what part broke down? Mm-hmm. Illness is like something broke down. And how do we fix those broken parts so we can get the machine functioning back again? We look at it like, okay, you're a whole person. Let's look at the big picture. Let's look at everything that's happening that could be contributing to this, right? That's partly why we have so many products.
Yeah.
Okay. With me so far?
I'm with you.
You want to add anything? I know I'm talking a lot here.
No, I think you're absolutely right with your approach and kind of your thought process, but I'm intrigued to where this continues.
To see where this goes.
Yeah.
Okay. So a paper that was published recently, like 2025, it is some research on aromatherapy. Now, we're more than an aromatherapy company. We're more than that. Aromatherapy is one aspect of essential oils, but these researchers looked at aromatherapy specifically. And here's just a couple of the things that they said in here. And I'll explain this if it doesn't make sense. One is aromatherapy exhibits multi-target regulatory properties, delivering multi-level benefits to users. Okay? We know that essential oils are made up of hundreds of individual compounds. Well, if we go back to that idea of reductionism and the reductionist model, when we think of pharmaceuticals or medicines, usually it's a single compound, right? They isolate it down to one compound because the way they test it is they want to see where that one compound goes in the body, what receptor site, what enzyme it impacts. It's this simplification of it. And that is very helpful in some instances. But it's that single compound, single effect. When you're doing a science experiment, which we've all done before in school, right? You want to limit all of the variables except for the one that you're researching.
You need a control group. Yep.
You have to have the control group. You have to get rid of all of the variables so you can just see what's the one thing that's doing this. That's helpful in a lot of instances, but it has its limitations. And so the other thing they said in this paper is talking about aromatherapy and therefore essential oils. By influencing these interconnected physiological processes, aromatherapy contributes to the holistic maintenance of overall health and well-being. And that's really what we're about, right? We look at these interconnected relationships. And what's cool about that is we see that in people when it relates to our health. But if you think about our farms and the way we farm and the bee research, the pollinator research that we've done, the regenerative agriculture, the whole idea is that it's all interconnected. Seed to seal is this idea of interconnection. The seed that you pick matters, that the way you farm it matters, that the way that you distill it matters. Like everything is interconnected. You can't just say it's one of these things. And I think that's one of the amazing things about Young Living is that idea like pervades everything that we do here. It's kind of like our philosophy, our motto.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is strange about even calling these things complementary, like they would consider aromatherapy complementary medicine. They consider like massage complementary medicine.
Interesting.
Right? Acupuncture, things like that. Basically anything that's separate from and different from like the Western medical sciences, they consider complementary medicine. But we're looking at the whole person.
Yeah.
Shouldn't whole person health be like the primary approach to health? And if you do have a breakdown, if you have something going wrong, shouldn't that be the complementary approach, right? Think of how much healthier the world would be, we would be, the country would be, if we approached health from like a whole person standpoint. That health isn't just the absence of disease. Health is like the flourishing of the individual throughout all of the systems and environments and ecosystems they're a part of. That if that were the primary approach, we would all be so much more healthy.
Yeah.
I think.
Dad always looked at it from that approach, I would say.
Yeah.
One thing that I think that he always got frustrated by, specifically when it came to modern medicine, is that thing where it was single element benefit. And he's like, okay, you're addressing a drop in the bucket, but you're not looking at the bottom of the bucket, which is causing the root problem, right?
Yeah.
And he always said, he's like, look, I've had my fair shares of accidents. I've been in the hospital, and I'm very grateful for all of our modern medicine, for all the modern tools and everything. But they just repaired the part that was broken during the time being, but didn't really go deeper than that. And I think that's where a lot of his research kind of led him, was going to that primary issue, that root cause, that root problem, right? And fixing that, which then would kind of create this ripple effect, this spiderweb effect of also fixing everything else that was happening too. So yeah, whole body is how we should look at it. And I don't know if it's an oversight or if it's too complex or too difficult or whatever it may be, but it's almost this like easy thought process, and you'd think, okay, well, why don't we do it this way in the beginning? It seems easy enough, but sometimes we just don't think about it.
Yeah, I think it's like a pendulum swing, right? Like, science is great. I mean, science has given us so many technological advancements. It's made us healthier in so many ways. The pendulum has swung so far in this reductionism like side, though, that people are starting to recognize the issues with it. And not just issues like there's limitations.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say that there's limitations. And I think it used to be considered more sort of woo-woo to talk about these things. But
it still is, depending on who you ask.
It still is, depending on who you ask. But like, doctors are talking about this. People are publishing papers on it. One of the things, I do a lot of reading of like papers because it just, that sort of thing interests me. And I came across one that was titled "The Limits of Reductionism in Medicine." So this is starting to be a more accepted idea in research in medicine. And I really liked one of the things that I came across there, where they said there are circumstances in which the complex interplay between parts yields a behavior that cannot be predicted by the investigation of the parts alone. And it says that the failure to account for those circumstances is why this idea of reductionism is often inadequate. When we just look at the individual parts alone, we miss out on, well, what's the interplay between those parts?
Yeah.
And this is, I think, especially important when we think about using essential oils as part of our wellness. Hundreds and hundreds of compounds in essential oils. When someone's using that, when someone's breathing in that aroma, when someone's applying it topically, when someone's taking our vitality oils internally, how can you identify the individual compound that's having the effect?
Yeah.
Like, it's almost impossible to. Like, there really isn't a way to do that. You have to look at the interplay of all of those compounds together and the interplay of how they work in all of the systems in the body that they're impacting. And this just goes back to that idea of whole person health, and that there are multi-level pathways that they work on for, and this is the key part for us and for our customers, multi-level benefits. So we can get to frankincense now because it's such a great example of the challenges and the limitations of this idea. And it ties into the different types of frankincense we have and our DeepSpectra frankincense squared.
And I think also why purity matters, right?
Yes.
Talking about this specifically, when we did our last podcast with Mr. Howard Gurney, we looked at we call it the smell factory spectrum. And I think you remember this, but it was HK worked on this, and it was all the different nodes within the brain that got triggered just by smelling lavender essential oil.
Yes.
And it was 2 different spectrums, and it's like a 12 by 12 square, and there's all these little blocks, right?
Yep.
And each block represents a different part within the brain that smelling this lavender triggered. And it was a side-by-side comparison of store-bought, off-the-shelf, very not pure, even though it says pure on it, lavender compared to our lavender specifically. And it was shocking to see how the 100% fake, synthetic, all this other stuff, I think it maybe triggered like 3 or 4 total nodes, right?
Yeah.
And it leveled from a scale of very light purple to a very dark purple. And then you compared it to our lavender specifically, which we know like where we get it, the soil, the seed, everything you talked about with seed to seal, and it almost lit up the whole entire board.
It lights up the brain.
That's just smelling it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the one-to-one that you're talking about, where we have this one thing, where we're approaching this one thing. But just from smelling it, there's like all these 18 different things. So I really just wanted to talk on that part specifically of why also purity and knowing the oil that you're getting and where you're getting it from truly matters too. But continue with the frankincense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because especially if you're putting these into your body, right? And I mean, that's why your dad was so vigilant about the sourcing and the farming and the agriculture and where they come from, because you want to know that what you're putting into your body is good. Okay, so frankincense. I won't even talk about what they were researching, but there was a small clinical trial done recently with a frankincense extract. They call it a boswellia extract in the trial. And they found that whatever it was they were researching, that the boswellia extract showed a significant decrease in what they were trying to decrease, or a significant improvement in what they were looking at and hoping to improve, right? So this was very encouraging for the researchers. And they're like, okay, we have something here. We have something here. And they talked about what their next steps are. And they said specifically, our next steps are to try to isolate out the individual boswellic acids and identify which one of those is having this impact that we're measuring and that seems so positive to us. And what was really interesting is that the researcher actually said this step of the process has proved more challenging than usual based on the difficulty we had in identifying the active pharmaceutical ingredient. So, right, they have this complex mixture from frankincense, from the tree, from the resin that's doing something, and then they're trying to isolate it down to identify what's the active ingredient, and they're having a hard time doing that. So when I read that, knowing what we've just talked about, what I see very clearly there is the limitation of that reductionist model. They've taken this natural extract and they want to isolate it down. And of course, what they would do when they isolate it is they would synthesize it so they could then patent it. And then no one else could use it for 10, 20 years, however long those patents last.
And what's so cool about what you're talking about specifically, and I'd love for you to go into DeepSpectra to kind of explain this.
Yeah.
That single compound that they're isolating to, patent, extract, and turn into their method, right? The problem that my dad saw, because he looked at this specifically, but he realized that when you isolate those compounds, they turn into what are called volatile compounds, where they're extremely difficult. They don't work with other stuff. And what they could do and can't do kind of became a big gray area of unknown. Reason being is because if you look at us as humans, right? If you remove one part of our DNA, we're no longer human. We're something completely different. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the essential oils. When you move certain compounds that all work together to form the oil itself, to form the frankincense itself, it no longer is that frankincense. And sometimes you need other parts of the compounds, other part of the chemistry and the DNA and the profile of the oil to have that one isolated compound to function the way that it should.
Yeah.
And so I know exactly which paper you're talking about. And this is where the trouble that they ran into, where they realized that compound specifically, they realized, I can't remember if it would not be as effective, or they didn't know how to control it as well and stabilize it. And so they had to add a bunch of other stuff to it to stabilize it, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise it could be too much.
Yep.
And so that's why it's so important when it comes to the oils itself, that you're not just removing one thing. Like, that's why we give you the oils as whole as they possibly can be.
Exactly.
Just because they can't function without. They could in theory, but you won't get all the properties of it. So then that's where what we're talking about right now, where we're trying to enhance this, that's where DeepSpectra comes into play. So I'd love you to I just wanted to talk about that and why it's so important that we're discussing this, so you kind of understand and can grasp why what we're doing with DeepSpectra in particular is just so revolutionary, so different and groundbreaking in a sense.
Yeah, and why it's important. One of the concepts or theories for these essential oils and how they work is that they are the concept that they're intelligent mixtures. So essential oils, if you think about it, have been formed by the plants, by the trees, by these plants that they come from over a long time. They've developed them to benefit the plants, and plants benefit us through it. We have a symbiotic nature, where a symbiotic relationship with nature. And so there's this concept that they're intelligent mixtures. And when you start changing it, you're changing it away from how it was the plant intelligence that created that.
Yeah.
And hopefully that doesn't sound too woo to people. I think it really is just science. Like, they have developed over a long time to perform this way for the plant, and then they have an impact on us.
Yeah. And
when you look at frankincense resin, essential oil makes up something like 5 to 8, maybe 5 to 10% of the resin itself. So when we steam distill it, we're getting about 5 to 10% of the compounds out of that resin. What we don't get out of that when we steam distill it is boswellic acids. Those are heavier, they're bigger compounds. They don't come through in steam distillation. But they're one of the most researched beneficial compounds for health and wellness in frankincense. And so I think that's one of the reasons HK and your dad and others, Dr. Suhail from our distillery in Oman with Sacred Frankincense, started looking at this. Like, how do we get this? How do we get this in there? Because it's more beneficial compounds from the plant. And that's what DeepSpectra frankincense is it uses the essential oil to go back to that resin and extract those heavier compounds, including the boswellic acids. Now, we talk a lot about the boswellic acids, but there's a really cool chart in the paper that we published on DeepSpectra, which you can find on our website, that they looked at compounds that were more prevalent in the DeepSpectra than they are in frankincense alone. We know we have 6 different boswellic acids in there. There are hundreds of compounds that are more prevalent in DeepSpectra frankincense squared than the essential oil alone. So we're pulling even more goodness out of that plant, right?
And what's amazing is, one, we are the only ones that are able to do this. We're the ones that discovered it. And so the one question that I get asked a lot, and I think it'd be great if you answered this one, is, so if DeepSpectra frankincense has all these extra compounds, does that make our current frankincense and what we have that's not DeepSpectra kind of not as good? Or does it become irrelevant when the current procedure and method that we have for DeepSpectra becomes more, I guess, easier to access and do? Because right now it's still a very complex, expensive process to do. So
yeah, no, I mean, I think the answer is absolutely not. It doesn't make it not as good. I think of them as different applications. So first thing, don't diffuse your DeepSpectra frankincense squared.
Because you won't get those heavier compounds.
You won't get those heavier compounds. So you're going to be leaving benefits in your diffuser water if you diffuse frankincense squared.
It's also a little bit thicker viscosity.
Yeah.
And when we talk about viscosity, it's the thickness, right? It's how thick something is. I basically explain it's kind of like the fat of the oil, right? And so when something's more fatty, it's much harder for it to be diffused, especially through an atomizer like the Wonderful. I've always told people, like, just fattier oils like that, don't even attempt them. It will it will clog your stuff.
Yes.
So,
yeah, and so what you do with the frankincense squared, I mean, applying it topically is one thing, but it is labeled for internal use, right? So if you're going to take a frankincense internally, for me, that would be frankincense squared, because you are getting more of the compounds from the plant. And our own internal research showed that we had nearly a 5 times higher antioxidant activity with frankincense squared than we did with the oil alone. So supporting a healthy inflammatory response in your body, frankincense squared, DeepSpectra is the winner there. So what do you use the other frankincense for? Well, for me, the regular frankincense, for lack of a better way of describing it, diffusion, great way to use it. It's also good topically. So adding that to some of your skincare routines, frankincense is good for that. For me, sacred frankincense, that's the spiritual frankincense. Mm-hmm. So if you are using frankincense in your meditation, in your prayer, in your journal writing.
And sacred frankincense has a ton of historical background and context to the Bible, the Quran. You see in the Catholic Church in Europe, they actually go around burning it, is the correct term. Yeah. So there's a lot of historical, biblical, religious context tied to that sacred frankincense. So many references.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So that's why that one for me, I think, and for everybody, if you're looking a way to differentiate, if you have a spiritual practice, sacred frankincense is the way to go. Not DeepSpectra frankincense squared for your spiritual practice. I mean, you can if you want to. I'm not going to say no if you want to.
You're just not going to get all the benefits from it. So. Yeah.
So if you want to differentiate them, that's I think a good way to do it. And I believe on our Young Living Instagram account, we actually did put up a table comparing.
Yes, I did see that.
So you can, if you have a question about what we're talking about and how to differentiate the three, go to social media, go to the Young Living Instagram account, and you can find that table that we posted.
If you'd also like to find more info about it or read up a little bit more, we have a lot of content within the Oleo app itself. You go to the library, type in DeepSpectra frankincense and frankincense in general, and there's a lot of what we call PIPS product information pages and a bunch of other stuff that kind of breaks it down and showcases it a little bit more too. So,
yeah. So I think this idea of the spirituality, whatever your background, whatever your religious background is, even if you don't have one, but you believe that there's something greater than just you as an individual, right? We're all interconnected. Mm-hmm. We're all interconnected. Nature, us, the systems within our bodies, you and me, our friend recording us over here that you guys never get to see. We're all interconnected. And that whole person health really ties into that. And any spiritual belief that anybody has is really going to support that. Yeah. This idea that we need to be complete. And I read a quote from your dad the other day where he talked about what we're all about is having that whole, complete, healthy life, and that we're really focused on giving the body what it needs to take care of itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to think about all essential oils, but our frankincense and our DeepSpectra frankincense squared especially, is you're giving your body, when you take that, you're giving your body what it needs to support itself. Our bodies are these like amazing creations, right? And if we support them, they do know oftentimes how to take care of themselves. And that's really what the Young Living lifestyle is about.
It's so true. You know, my parents always talked about, you know, if you take care of your body takes care of you. And I think both my parents were perfect examples of that, right? I mean, just how vigilant my dad was. I mean, he outlived his life expectancy from his original accident, by 4 times. And just so many things that ultimately, in the time and the moment that it happened, that should have, ended his life. And then my mom, who is still very much around, live and kicking, and, she's in the gym every day, she's active, but it's also, and I highly emphasize this, you can work out as much as you want, but it will mean absolutely jack squat if you do not look at your diet and then the routine that you're doing to take care of your body. So it's a great example of she's a perfect example. It's like, if you want to not only live a long life, but a healthy and good life where towards the later end of your years, you're not suffering, right? Mm-hmm. That is the best way to do it, to, be complete, essentially, to make sure that you're whole. So I think that's really great. And it's hard having those examples in your life, because then you realize when you go to Chuckarama, or I will admit, I love Five Guys from time to time, that you're just not following that very well. But
well, that's also why we have the products that we do, to help for when when you make some of those choices that maybe aren't that great for your body.
Cool. Well, Brad, thank you so much for sharing everything that you did in regards to this whole body approach. I think that's just another great way to kind of break down and look at it in a smaller step to achieve the ultimate goal when it comes to your goals that you have in general. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's great. There's so much exciting stuff with DeepSpectra, and we have quite a bit that's coming out with DeepSpectra, so stay tuned for that. And just so much more that we're learning and discovering with it, which we're very excited to share. Any last notes or words from you?
I appreciate being here. Thanks so much for having me back. And just these ideas that we're talking about, the more compounds, the more benefits. These multi-system, multi-level benefits really applies to all of the DeepSpectra extracts that we do. Anything that comes out in the future, if you understand that concept that we're talking about today, you're going to understand, why do we use essential oils? Why is DeepSpectra even better? So hopefully
and why
that helps.
DeepSpectra even matters.
Yes. Yep. So, for sure.
Well, awesome. We're excited to have you back on the podcast. And until then, stay safe, and thank you for all you do.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for tuning into this episode of The Wild Drop. Remember, you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on YouTube, our website, which is www.youngliving.com, and check out our podcast on our brand new Olio app by Young Living. That is Olio by Young Living on the Apple Store and Google Play Store as well. Don't forget to oil up Young Living family. This is Jacob Young, dropping out. Take care.